Now, here's another question that I have. And this is something that really, really reflects what's going on. And that is, what's up, 117 Rebel? That is, what's going to happen with the Ayatollah Khomeini? That's the question. Bashar al-Assad has been toppled. He's gone. He's no more. He's living in Russia right now. That's where he's living. And so the question is, what's going to happen with the Ayatollah Khomeini? Is the Khamenei going to remain in power? Or is he going to be toppled? Is the regime, the Iranian Ayatollahist regime, going to be toppled? That's the question. Because I think it's clear from what I have read that there is a lot of hatred against the Ayatollah, against the regime. And the hatred against the regime has increased even more because of Assad's toppling. Why is that? Because the Iranian nation is under some serious economic hardship. There's a lot of economic problems. The Iranian currency is doing very, very poorly. And it has been leaked to the Iranian society, the Iranian people, that the Iranian government, the regime, paid billions of dollars to fund Hezbollah and the Assad government. It's part 2 of the Arab Spring, and it might extend into an Iranian Spring. We have yet to see. But there is a lot of anger in Iran. There has been a lot of anger in Iran, but I think that anger has been exasperated and amplified and intensified because of the fact that the Iranian government put so many billions of dollars into the Syrian regime, to the Assad regime. And the Iranian people are saying, well, we have been suffering, and yet you have given all this money to Syria and Hezbollah, when that money could have been used to help ordinary Iranian citizens. Kind of like what's been going on here, where you have people saying, I can barely afford rent, and I read the news, and they're telling me that another $100 million has been sent to Ukraine. So there's a lot of anger, and there has been a lot of talk in the U.S. government to capitalize on that anger, and there's been a lot of discourse within American politics about how, since Assad has now been toppled, now is the time to hit the metal when it's hot and do some regime change in Iran. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu recently stated that the Ayatollah's regime is going to be gone soon. He said that he basically said that the downfall of the Iranian regime is nigh, and the days of the Iranian regime are numbered. And this is what Benjamin Netanyahu said in an address to the Iranian people yesterday. And it says here, with the fall of Syria's Bashar al-Assad over the weekend and a new White House on the horizon, Iranian resistance leaders and U.S. lawmakers alike have begun expressing hope that Iran will topple its own leadership in a similar fashion with U.S. help. A bipartisan group of senators spoke in support of toppling the Iranian Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, both through a return to former President Trump's maximum pressure campaign through sanctions and supporting the Iranian resistance movement, a piece that was missing during the first Trump administration. Now, to give you guys some more background on this, when Donald Trump was the president the first time, his administration was talking a lot about pushing the Iranian nation into a revolution and pushing the country to a revolution by exasperating the economic hardship that the country was going through, and the country is still going through this. And I remember Rudy Giuliani making this plan very clear when he said in a speech that the economic problems in Iran due to the sanctions could push the Iranian people to overthrow their government. So the goal of the the sanctions has been to really push the Iranian people into a revolution. That this is what this is a part of. This is the strategy. And so because there's a lot of anger in Iran towards the regime, there are Americans saying, hey, now's the time. Now, what is the Iranian resistance? So it says here that there are people saying that we should work to do regime change in Iran with the help of the Iranian resistance movement. What this article is referring to is the MEK. We're talking about the People's Mujahideen of Iran, or Mujahideen el-Halq Iran, which means exactly that, the People's Mujahideen of Iran. This is a terrorist organization, and in fact, it was designated as a terrorist organization years ago, and then the Americans said, it's not really a terrorist organization anymore. They're actually our friends. And now the Americans are using the MEK as a proxy, and who knows? You might see one day on the news that the regime has been taken out, and the MEK is now a part of the government or dominating the government. You can't take down an enemy government without the consent of that government's people. That's right. That's why they're trying to push the people into hating the Iranian government. That's the whole idea. So it says here, we have an obligation to stand together with allies in making sure this regime's suppression will come to an end, said Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey. And it says here that Iran is projecting only weakness, said Senator Jean Shaheen, another Democrat. This one is from New Hampshire. And it says here, I have for a long time been willing to call quite unequivocally for regime change in Iran, Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas. The Ayatollah will fall, the mullahs will fall, and we will see free and democratic elections in Iran. Change is coming, and it's coming very soon, the Texas Republican predicted. We will return to a maximum pressure policy, cut the cruel regime from resources from every direction possible. We are going to shut down nuclear research facilities. We are going to cut off their oil. Could this happen? It's possible. Now, this is the cult leader. I don't know if you guys can see her face, but she is the cult leader of the MEK. The MEK is a cult. It's a terrorist organization, and it's also a cult. And they manipulate their followers into being terrified of them. And they'll say things like, well, they do this thing in the MEK where if you're a member of their group, they will psychoanalyze you, and they will force you, or they will pressure you into undergoing a dream interpretation. Looks like a DEI. Oh, that's good. That's golden. That's a really good one. That's a really good one. But yeah, they will pressure their followers to go through dream interpretation. And they'll say, what did you dream about? And you say, well, I dreamed this and I dreamed that. And they'll say, you're a terrible person if you dreamt this. That means you're a sick person, you're evil, you're this. And then they will manipulate you into being terrified. And then they will make you have this sense of being spiritually subservient to them. And they'll try to get you to think that you have to be subservient to them. I mean, it's a cult, right? It's an evil cult. So it says here that when asked if he would like to see Iran change its ruling system, Trump told Iranian-American producer Patrick Bait-David, we can't get totally involved. So Trump is basically taking the non-interventionist position, and he's saying, listen, I don't think we should get involved in Iran, but who knows what's going to happen behind the curtains when we have a Trump administration. I think we need to support politically the opposition inside of Iran. Provide them equipment, provide them information. The regime is not going to walk away. You've got to force them out. Damn. And this is from Mr. Brownback, who was a Trump appointee. I mean, these guys it's like we're back in 2003. Iran watchers believe the fall of Assad, who was heavily backed by Iran and its proxy force Hezbollah, is the perfect moment to do that. So they're saying, listen, Iran got cut off from its ally Hezbollah. Iran has been cut off from its Assad ally. Syrian upheaval has Iranian leaders reeling. So this is an article that talks about the immense anger in Iranian society about the fact that Iran gave so many billions of dollars to Syria and Hezbollah. Let's see here. Remedy, show your teacher the book called Siege. Okay, Theo, do you think Russia is leaving Syria, or will they strike a deal? I think they're going to try to stay in Syria because they have access into the Mediterranean. And as long as they have a presence in Syria, they have an access into the Mediterranean that is not dependent on Turkey's control, because Turkey controls the Dardanelles, which gives you access into the Aegean Sea and, by extension, into the Mediterranean Sea. And Russia doesn't want to have to go through Turkey, so Russia would much rather go through Syria. So it says here, the Syrian upheaval has Iranian leaders reeling too. A lot of people in Iran pissed off. They gave all this money to Syria and Hezbollah, but no money for the people. In the days since the abrupt and unexpected obliteration of Iran as a dominant presence in Syria, the government has faced a fierce public backlash over the billions of dollars spent and the Iranian bloodshed to back the Assad regime. So the Iranians are saying, listen, a whole bunch of Iranians were killed in Syria thanks to the Iranian government, because Iran sent soldiers into Syria, and some of those soldiers never made it back. So you have these Iranian families saying we lost loved ones because of the regime's policy, and plus the regime has spent so many tens of billions of dollars on Syria, on Hezbollah, but yet here we are suffering through this economic turmoil. The criticism has come from unexpected corners, including conservatives, and is flowing freely on television channels and talk shows and in social media posts and virtual town halls attended by thousands of Iranians. It's pretty surreal, guys. I mean, we think that Iran is this country where all speech is controlled, and they do try to suppress certain speech in Iran, no doubt. But here we are reading that there's a lot of angry discourse, a lot of acrimonious discourse against the regime, and this discourse is being expressed in online channels, on television, talk shows. So the anger is really, really showing itself, and it's boiling over into the general society. One former lawmaker, Heshmatollah Falah Peshie, said in a social media post that Iranians should rejoice at the fall of Iran's long-standing ally, President Bashar al-Assad of Syria. Quote, "No one will be able to waste Iran's dollars for maintaining a spider web anymore." While opponents of the government have long bristled at the money Iran has sent all over the Middle East, the sentiment now seems to have spread. Even some who fought on their government's behalf in Syria or lost family members in the civil war, they are asking if it was worth it. A lot of anger because Iran has been spending tons of money on its policy in Syria, on its policy in Lebanon, and you have Iranians who have not made it back, who have been killed fighting in Syria. And so you have a lot of Iranian families saying, well, what was the point? What is the point? So you might see a revolution in Iran, is what I'm saying. You might actually see it one day. Who knows? Maybe not. I'm not saying it's emphatic. I'm not saying it's going to happen 100%, but you might see it happening. Don't be surprised if it does. Just saying. And so it says here, Ibrahim Motaji, a professor of international relations at Tehran University, said on a talk show that Iran had been reduced from regional power to merely another country. So they're saying, listen, because of Iran's policy, Iran now is no longer even is no longer a regional superpower. It's now just a regular country in the Middle East. I'm not sure if I would go that far. I think Iran definitely still has a big presence in the Middle East, and I think Iran is going to try to revive its power in the Middle East, no doubt. In a front-page opinion piece in the newspaper, Ham Mehan, a former Iranian representative to the Intergovernmental Organization of Islamic Cooperation, lashed out at his government. The defeat of Mr. al-Assad, wrote the cleric Muhammad Shariati Deghan, exposed Iranian strategy as misguided and built on weak foundations. So now you have people, it's not just people who are secular, who are against the Iranian regime. It also has been people who are religious, people who are clerics, people who are in the religious sector of Iranian society, who have been against the regime, who have been critical of the regime. So you might see a revolution in Iran, and if you do see a revolution, it will be a mix. It'll be an amalgamation between secular and religious forces. That's what it's going to be, if it does indeed happen. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. Ted, why did Syria fall in the span of a few days when it held most of the country the majority of the time? It's because it lost its allies. That's the reason why. It lost Russia, it lost Iran. So there was no point, and Syria was facing a rising Turkey, and Syria is no match to Turkey. And so I think Russia just told Bashar, listen, we're not going to help you. We're bogged down in Ukraine. You're going to have to get the hell out, and we'll give you refuge in Russia. And that's that. The Syria debate is happening at all levels of society, not just in the media and social media, but in daily interactions everywhere. One prominent analyst, Hassan Shemshadi, said in a telephone interview from Tehran, people are asking, why did we spend so much money there? What did we achieve? What is our justification now that it's all gone? Mr. Shemshadi, who was close to the government and until last year served as the head of the Iran-Syria Joint Chamber of Commerce, said that while the shape of future Iranian and Syrian relations was now uncertain, a strategic partnership built over 4 decades was now clearly history. And that's pretty sad. But really, now that Assad is gone, Iran has lost its ally. Who knows? Maybe the Turks will make an alliance with the Iranians to do the second Holocaust. We'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. Gone too, he said, is the unfettered access to supply routes in Syria that Iran had long had to equip militants across the region with weapons and other materials. The Iranian Vice President for Strategy, Mohammad Javad Zarif, said his country, quote, stands steady to have good relations with the future government of Syria, and we have always stood at the side of Syrian people. But Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, in his first public address about events in Syria, took a harsher tone on Wednesday. He blamed the United States and Israel for Mr. al-Assad's downfall, referring to the rebels who toppled him as aggressors, with competing motives who were serving their masters, the Turks, and the Israelis. He also alluded to Turkey's support for some of the rebels in Syria. Khamenei appeared outraged at the open criticism. The comments, he said, were a crime because they were so. Here's the thing: is that Khomeini now is trying to suppress the criticism against him. He's trying to suppress the criticism against him, and what that means is that he's weak. That's what that means. That means he is desperate. He has no other choice but to try to control the speech of his citizens. And when you have that much anger, and that anger is boiling over into general societal discourse, and the government is trying to suppress it, what that means is the government is desperate. The government is fighting to survive. So like I said, it's possible that we will see a revolution in Iran. It's entirely possible. What happened in Syria will happen in Israel. I could totally see that, yeah. Absolutely. You could see one day a civil war in Israel. That's what I think is going to happen. It happened before. It happened before the destruction of the temple. There was a civil war that broke out in Roman-occupied Judea. And the Jews killed each other. The Jews killed each other. And the Romans pounced on it. They took advantage of it. And they vanquished the Jews. And I could totally see that happening. I could totally see a civil war breaking out in Israel, and Turkey seeing the commotion, allowing it to happen, or just watching it from a distance, and letting Israel destroy itself before it pounces. I can totally see that happening. So it says here, so the Iranian government is actually trying to censor the criticism of the government's policy towards Syria. The Iranian government's policy of pouring billions of dollars into Hezbollah. The government is trying to suppress the criticism of that particular policy. So it says here, within hours, Iran's judiciary announced a criminal investigation into a list of prominent figures and news outlets that have been leading the criticism. The list included Mr. Falahat Pesheh, the former lawmaker who revealed that Syrian debt to Iran amounted to about 30 billion. So people are criticizing the fact that the Iranian government gave so many billions of dollars to Syria. And the Iranian government wants to suppress that criticism because the Iranians don't want a revolution. That's what that means.